And we're live to review the first episode of the second series. So I'm just going to wait a moment. Now I'm going to read through this.
The second series of what, Ben?
Kappatoo, the title of the episode that is in
So you're
the
saying
title of the series is in the flipping title of the video.
It's Kappatoo 2?
Yes, Kappatoo 2. And I have to be careful reading this out because I read through it yesterday. There's a couple of mistakes in it in the grammar. 2 years after the events of the first series, Kappatoo and his computer watch Simon on the histogram and see that he keeps suffering from a recurring nightmare of himself being sucked into the black hole that he accidentally sent himself to at the end of the first season. It transpires that after rescuing him, Kappatoo had a memory freeze placed on Simon and Steve so that they do not remember anything about Kappatoo and the time swap. Kappatoo worries that it may be wearing off. While Kappatoo is relaxing at the local café, Zeta's, a friend of his rushes in and informs him that Sigmasix has been released from psycho-correction and is being returned home. Kappatoo returns to his dome and his computer advises him that Sigmasix must apologize to him as part of his release, but has serious doubts that the psycho-correction has had any effect. Kappatoo meets Sigmasix at Zeta's as arranged, so Sigmasix can apologize, which he does. He is then placed into the custody of his aunt Zeta 8, who agrees to be held responsible for any of his actions. Kappatoo still can't believe he has changed. Once Sigmasix and Zeta return to her dome, it immediately becomes apparent that Sigmasix has not changed and vows to get revenge on Kappatoo. It also becomes clear that Zeta bought Sigmasix out of psycho-correction with the sole intention of getting revenge on Kappatoo for the damage Sigmasix being caught time traveling and being sent to psycho-correction has done to the family name. Zeta knows the truth and intends to expose Kappatoo as a real time criminal. Other plot. Simon, apart from having the same nightmare, seems to be leading a normal life and has no memory of his time swap with Kappatoo. He and Steve, as well as Lucy and her friend Sharon, all head off to Devon to spend the summer holiday on his Uncle Brian's farm. It transpires that Simon knows nothing about his Uncle Brian, as he suspects that he has loads of money. This turns out to be not the case, and Brian, his wife Hazel, and their daughter Melanie lead a simplistic lifestyle. Steve soon begins to regret coming, especially as he and Simon have to sleep in an old caravan. But the appearance of Simon's really attractive cousin Melanie soon changes his mind as they both immediately fall in love with her. They both volunteer to help her out. Oh no! They both volunteer to help out with her duties while they are there. Yes. And the actress who would go on to do lots of things, her name is Sarah Alexander. Over to you, Jeff.
So my first thought in you reading that was, okay, so the memory freeze, did they put that on the others also, like Lucy and Sharon, who both said that he was an alien? Did they bother to do that, or do they still remember all that?
Spoilers.
Okay, well, I'm just saying that's what I wonder about. The other thing was I wondered, in that picture, you don't actually see his mother, right? You just hear her voice. So it made me wonder, did they just use a recording of her from previously, or did they use a different person, or what? Because you don't actually see her and she's not in the rest of it.
Yeah, they've probably done that, yeah.
Yeah, so I wondered about that. They did sound like the same voice, but it seems unlikely that they would have had her come in just to record that one line of dialogue in audio, but, who knows? And the other thing I was like, okay, we talked about in the last episode that it didn't make sense for the computer to be like talking to Kappatoo while doing impressions of 20th century stuff. In this one, it makes even less sense because it's been 2 years and like he had already dehumanized himself, and then suddenly he's back as the guy, as the human version of the computer doing impressions of things that Kappatoo doesn't know. Like, what the hell?
Yeah, but that's easy. That could be. We could say, look, obviously at this point the computer is not completely under the control of Kappatoo, and he's got a bit of his own.
Oh, are you saying that the computer said, I liked being a human, so I'm going to go back to doing that?
Well, you saw that bit at the beginning when that he's not changing, that he's stuck with it.
Yeah, well, that part was a little bit credibility stretching. I'll just put it that way.
Well, I mean, you've seen plenty of things in science fiction where these computers and robots get out of hand.
What was that? I can't. These are going by too fast for me to read what you typed in there. So
yeah, what I'll do is I'll go back a bit. That was about. Yeah, I'll just slow down the slides. Oh, that's not right.
And my first impression in the first few minutes is that it was very like all over the place and haphazard and kind of goofy. And I would say probably somewhere about halfway through it stabilized a bit, started to make a little bit more sense, and the pacing was better. But they kind of just, the beginning definitely it wasn't very coherent.
Yeah, I was about to say made for NTPs. But
yeah, I don't know about that. It just was made for people who want to hear like a bunch of stuff being spouted really quickly without really understanding. Okay, so you were just commenting on her age. Okay, I couldn't quite read that, so I wasn't sure.
Yeah. Slowed it down.
So she's a few months younger than me.
Yeah. November 14th. Yeah, 76, something like that.
Yeah, I still don't know who Bruce Forsyth is, so that means nothing to me.
Right. Yeah, bit of a legend, Bruce Forsyth.
He's such a legend, I have no idea who he is.
A domestic legend.
Yeah. Well, I understand, because there's been a few people that I mentioned that you didn't know who I was talking about that were pretty fan. I think when we had the discussion about Edgar Allan Poe, like I think you had heard of him, but you weren't as familiar with his work as I expected people to be.
Yeah,
when we were doing the homicide episode, that was his Telltale Heart featured prominently in. So
the first time I think I heard of him, well, like they did an episode of The Simpsons where they did the whole thing in the style of it. I thought that was very well written.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the very first Simpsons Halloween show that they did, The Raven, with James Earl Jones reading it. But yeah, anyway, sometimes those things we just sort of take for granted that they're known more outside of our home country, and then find out that they're not as much.
So, what did you think of Sarah Alexander as Melanie?
Well, she didn't really do much yet, but she served her purpose in the episode to immediately get all the attention of the two guys.
Yeah, I just wondered when you said, "Oh, it improved halfway through." Did that coincide with her appearance?
No, I wasn't talking about that. I just think,
like
in terms of like the structure of the episode and the pacing and everything, it seemed like they actually sort of relaxed and got into actually telling the story of what was going on now, as opposed to sort of like just info dumping.
Yeah, it's
like they were kind of doing it at the beginning, and I'm not even just talking about in the recap. That I understood, but then when they started the episode, it just seemed like the first few minutes they were just stuffed it with way too much information.
Yeah, I think it's a bit different for me in that, because this is like the third time I've seen it this year, because I watched it earlier this year and then I watched it yesterday, and so and when I watched it earlier this year, I sort of watched it over 3 or 4 days, most. So
you mean the whole series or this one episode?
The whole series. It was only 14 episodes of like.
Gotcha.
22 minutes each. 24 minutes, most of them. So yeah, there is that kind of like keeping up with the it is very much. I think it is a like because Wojtek watched it as well, but he watched it when he was 10 years old. It was quite popular in Germany. I think it appeals. I think the NTPs would like it on average more than other types because
I would say, looking at that, like it's a little bit. I mean, looking at that picture, that it's trying to find the word again. A little bit of a credibility thing. Where is a girl who's mostly doing farm chores going to be dressed that way with the perfect makeup and hair and everything and the earrings? Is that really how the farm girl is going to be? I mean, I know she knew there were visitors coming. Maybe she is trying to sort of impress them. I don't know, but that's my first thought, is thinking that if it was really she's just going about her business, then it's unlikely she would be dressed like that.
Yeah, Jeff, this is 1990s hair. 1990s did not have realistic hair. You look at Star Trek, Diagnosis Murder, where his hair on Barry Van Dyke is immaculate and he's meant to be this tough cop.
Yeah, well, I mean, off the top of my head, I don't remember specifically a show that I watched that featured a farm girl in it. But if there had been, I don't know that necessarily they all have been portrayed that way. But anyway, I don't know. I don't really have a good.
Oh, right. So, yeah, do you remember Runa Lenska? Was she in a Doctor Who? I think she was in one.
I don't know.
Right.
It could possibly be one I haven't seen yet. You tend to reference these ones I haven't gotten to, so I guess they're the ones that you remember best because maybe they were your childhood or something. So I don't know, but I haven't seen a lot of the. I haven't seen the mid to late '80s ones, except for maybe a long time ago myself. So if she was in that, then I didn't see it probably yet. But anyway.
So even though you like, it's not like 2 years since you've seen the first series, you still think there was too much of an information dump.
In the first few minutes, it seemed that way. Yeah, it seemed like a little bit kind of haphazard. I did notice that the writers of this, were different. So I thought, well, maybe they were trying to sort of throw in the stuff they were trying to establish from the previous thing, and then it began the things they actually wrote themselves. That's just a guess, though. But once that started happening, then it seemed to make a little bit more sense. It sort of calmed down a little bit.
Well, I mean, they had that sort of like info dump with the narrator for about the first.
Yeah, I don't mean the narration, but then when they started the actual episode, it was just like the stuff I didn't quite get because they were all talking pretty fast, and so I didn't get all the stuff about going to the farm, and then they also had in the future setting, they had several new characters that they just sort of rattle off things really quickly. So I didn't really get if we're supposed to know who any of those people are or their names. I don't remember any of that, so it all just kind of rattled off really fast.
Oh well. Well, to me, it was like, hey, we're going to go to the farm. I'm going to see my uncle. My uncle, he made a load of money in the city, so I expect him to be really rich. And
yeah, I didn't really get that part until he said the thing about he'll be the one in the Porsche or something. Obviously, I sort of put two and two together. That's what he was saying, but
yeah, there might be some references you might not have got. Like, so when he said a bomb in the city, so the city actually is. There's actually a part of Greater London that is the actual city of London, which is actually tiny. What people think of London is Greater London, and Westminster is actually the capital, which is a separate city. And so when they mean the city, it's like the financial district, and they call that the city. And so
okay, so like Wall Street type of
thing.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, if Wall Street were its own city.
Right.
Yeah. And then his personality type seems to wander between ENTP and ENFP.
Who?
Uncle Brian.
Oh. Well, in the first episode, I would say that he sort of, I guess, expresses a little bit in the NF direction, but that's about all we get out of it.
Yeah.
But obviously, he's practical enough that he's, he knows how to run a farm. He's not like completely head in the clouds guy or anything.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
There's plenty of like ISFP types that have that get back to nature thing.
Oh yeah, I think you once said that ISFP is on loan from the NFs. Is that a Jeff quote?
I don't think I said that exactly, but but I would say I do think they're probably the closest to having the most NF qualities of the SP types, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, of the SPs. Yeah, and frequently there's a digression. I think if an ISFP is also an Enneagram 4, they very easily can mistype as an NF.
Yeah, like I said, I think the ultimate test for that is if you have somebody that you are trying to figure out as I guess in general, NFP versus SFP, then just ask them what the meaning of life is. And if it's more than one sentence, then it's the NF.
Yeah. I mean, you've done videos with Shannon, so like ISFP fits her, but her new Facebook name is like very NF sounding.
Okay.
Astral something.
Yeah. Well, I once came up with a video game that I was going to call Astral Fighter. So
right.
It was going to be like a fighting game where you fought all of the representations of the Zodiac.
So, what do you think of the new characters in this?
The new characters. Okay, so we had future Ice Queen character.
Yeah, Zeta.
8 or
yeah. I'll write them down.
Morgan made comments about how, like, very obviously sort of stereotypical villainous she appears from the beginning. So it's like, oh, that's not predictable at all.
Yeah, especially when they turn up in America, and like we have 3 or 4 British accented villains in Man and Machine.
Yeah, well, I was talking about this.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's see, who else did we have? We already talked about the farm girl a little bit. She wasn't a whole lot to her other than, as you said, a perfect face and hair, the makeup and everything. So not really looking like a farm girl. And then who else was new? The uncle and aunt, I guess.
Yeah.
Like you said, the uncle guy is like he's a little bit funky, but anyway, not really hardly any kind of anything about the aunt's personality at this point.
Yep.
She's just what he said, the farmer's wife. Yeah, that's all I can remember as far as new character.
Right.
Because there were a few other people that were like his age in the future setting, but like I said, they all just sort of had like 1 or 2 lines. So they were not very memorable and don't know any of their names or what any of their thing. So I missed Move 4 because she was better,
Right. So what did you think of there's something that Nina Muskulik did? So her that plays Lucy. There's something she did when she was at the table when she sort of like mocked Steve. No, when she mocked her brother, smiling at she does that. What did you think of that moment when she was mocking the way he was smiling at Melanie?
I don't really have any special thought about that.
Yeah, I'm just scraping the barrel here, Jeff. I'm just looking for little moments. Yeah, there's a lot of setup in this.
It's weird because I think when he wears the outfit where he's being Kappatoo, he looks less changed than the Simon of 2 years. Maybe it's something about the outfit or where he wears his hair, but he looks like he's aged less. whereas when he's being Simon, he looks older.
Yeah, I mean,
That's just my impression, but
yeah, I mean, in terms of the age of the cast, like you've gone for, he was about 18 when he did the first series. Simon Nash.
Yeah, so obviously the adult characters don't really look that much different, but the and Sigma 06 looks pretty much exactly the same as he did before, except for, as Morgan said, his hair is even worse.
And Sarah Alexander was quite old at the time, born in 1971.
Yeah, so it's just one of those people that can play significantly younger. Like at this same time, we had Beverly Hills 90210, where we had like a couple of 30-year-olds playing high school students on that show in America. So, Gabrielle Carteris and Luke Perry were both like at least late 20s at the time they were playing like 17-year-olds on 90210.
Yeah, I used to like Melrose Place. Like it got good for a while.
I couldn't. The thing that kept me from being able to watch Melrose Place was the girl with the fake Southern accent. That just
right.
Amy LaCaine. Like I couldn't. I'm like, you couldn't have found an actual Southerner to play this part that could act. I mean, she's not that great an actress. So it's like you could at least found someone who can sound like they're actually from the South instead.
Usually when they do something like that, it shows lack of respect amongst the production.
Yeah, it's basically like they're like, nobody cares. Just find a hot-looking blonde chick. We don't care if she can actually, and she's going to be Southern for some reason. So just do a fake accent, and nobody will know the difference. So, yeah. But what I think they don't realize that you alienate quite a bit of people when you do that, because people that are actually from that area are kind of like, yeah, okay, this is great.
Yeah,
there was one time I remember there was an MTV. One of those MTV news things where they were reporting from whatever concert. I think it might have been Lollapalooza or one of those other traveling shows that went to a lot of cities. And they had they found like random fans to be sort of correspondents for MTV News. And my favorite one was they had this girl who came on and she goes, like, this is Alicia from Houston, Texas. I'm just kidding. This is Alicia from Houston. Like she puts on this fake accent for the beginning of her report and then I'm just playing around. I thought that was great.
Yeah, that's good.
Because most of the people that are not from Texas watching it probably would have been like, oh, yeah, there goes one of those Texans with those goofy accents again. So that was funny.
Right. Yeah, so it's hard to... So for me, this episode, a heck of a lot of setup. And it's hard with these episodes when you got a lot of setup you got a lot of setup to do, and you can't really do that much of a story.
Yeah, well, obviously, there's something where it's like the show is back, so they're counting on some of the original fans of the show are going to tune in to see what happens next. But then you also have new people that you have to.
Because of the age of people.
And so the original fans have got to be thinking, okay, there's going to be some way where they are going to switch places again. Because obviously, otherwise, why would they do this? It's going to have to happen in some capacity. But new people might not think that. They might think, oh, they really are going to have this separate story. But, they're just thinking about it, and especially them having dreams about it, that they're going to somehow get it mixed up again in some capacity. Don't know exactly why, but I like the fact that they didn't rush into that. Like I said, the beginning of the episode did feel kind of rushed, but they didn't rush into however they're going to end up swapping places again or whatever is going to happen with that. And the temptation, I'm sure, would have been to get into that by the end of the first episode, but it would have been too much to try to stuff all that into one episode. So it's good that they focused on kind of, like you said, the setup in a way that makes there be more suspense in that area. Like, they're going to get involved again somehow, but you don't know exactly how.
I think a change I would have made was I wouldn't have had Rula Lenska's character Zeta 8 reveal at the end of the first episode that she was a time traveler. I would just have had her go into that room and then leave it as a question for the audience. Oh, why has she got this room filled with all of this stuff?
Yeah.
All of these.
Yeah.
A bit more mystery, like you used to do in Doctor Who. The first episode of a story, mystery.
Right. There could have been more. Of course, like I said, I would have also gotten rid of the stupid computer guy. But
yeah.
But like we said before, sometimes some people, some characters that aren't very good, or for whatever reason, are popular. So. And I got nothing against the actor. It's just like the stupid way that they have him doing this stuff is just not entertaining to me. So.
Oh yeah, I mean it's like I mean that the actor is Andrew O'Connor, and who co-wrote this series 2.
Oh, so that's why he's in it. I'm going to write myself into this, even though it makes no sense for me to be the human computer guy. At least, see, that's the thing is, at least in the first one, it made sense for why he was there, even though, and it sort of was like you kind of cringe along with the real Simon as he experienced it, because it's like most people could probably imagine who, were around in 1990, if a stupid computer was trying to make references to your time period in pop culture and be like make some sort of hip connection with you. Then it's sort of like, okay, it's funny because this thing is trying to attempt to do this and is bad at it. But at this point, it just becomes a thing where you're like, just hit the delete button, man. Just get rid of it.
Yeah, but they had made that thing up where the masterclass computers are a little bit rebellious. They think more for themselves.
Well, then he at least should have changed into different people instead of just being that guy all the time. I guess they didn't want to spend the budget on different actors,
Yeah, I think it's not. I don't see the problem with the actor. I see the problem with that kind of zany comedy. It's like, okay, now we need to bring in an ENFP writer to write these bits.
And again, the part about him continuing to make 20th century references when it's to Kappatoo, who's not from there, that part doesn't make any sense at all. I mean, I guess
he's been programmed though. That's his reference base.
Why? Why has it been programmed to continue to do that?
Well, because now he's been programmed like that, and he can't change it. Now, the bit that I heard on commentary from you two was when you brought up the fact that he deleted himself at the end of the first series, and then he's back, and that is a discrepancy. Yeah,
that's what I said. He had already dehumanized himself, and why would he have a program that made him continue to be that way? That doesn't make any sense. He had the computer before he did the time travel stuff in the first place. So why would he program him that way?
Yes, but I think we've seen enough times in science fiction, robots and computers can get out of hand. I mean,
well, okay, but you could put in something in there about him malfunctioning or something like that, but I didn't hear anything like that. So
but they had that bit why you keep doing this, boy? You're really wazzing me off, and then he effectively said, "I'm stuck like this, pal. You're gonna have to like it or lump it. I'm not changing."
With no explanation, though. That's what I was talking about with the stuff at the beginning. They just sort of rattle off all this stuff, and I didn't even understand why. I'm the whole time I'm wondering, why is he like that guy again? And they make no actual explanation that I heard for it. So.
Yeah, I think it's for me, they've made enough of a theme of these masterclass computers sort of being quite utilitarian and sort of
the only thing I really heard about that in this was him saying that Sigmasix didn't have access to the masterclass computer because he was a felon.
Yeah.
But I didn't hear him say anything about the other stuff you're talking about.
But there is that bit. I'll try to get the wording right. Where so at least they have the bit where Kappatoo says it's really wazzing him off that he keeps doing this voice and these references from the 20th century.
Yeah, and see, I didn't even really hear that. I remember him saying something about wazzing me off, but I didn't even hear him say the other part. So
so the
thing is, it was too fast.
Right. Yeah, that might be. I mean, the way you were watching it, it might be what you were saying in that. It might be sort of the same as my experience when I watched the first episodes of Homicide.
Yeah, well,
in that it's just picking everything up.
It probably wouldn't have been. Probably wouldn't have been as noticeable if it weren't for the first season seemed to not be that way. I've remarked that they actually seem to take the time to have things clearer and have people speak clearer. And at the beginning of this one, that wasn't the case. Like I said, I think about towards the end of the episode, maybe halfway through or so, they seemed to calm things down a little bit and be a little bit more understandable what was going on, what people were saying.
I remember about Americans and understanding. It depends on the accents of the people, like how much they speak in the RP. Like Rudalenska, I bet you pretty much heard every word she said because she speaks in a very RP theatrical way. Received pronunciation.
Yeah, sometimes it's just the speed. I mean, it's just if they slow down, then I can understand. Even if there's a thick accent, if it's slow enough, then I can understand it.
Yeah. I mean, I was like,
if somebody speaks too fast, it's hard to understand.
Yeah, I was like that with the first episode of Homicide and the first view. It's just the speed of it.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's Homicide. I mean, there's lines that Yaphet Kotto says where I still don't understand what he said. So that's not even just not being American. Like there's Americans who have a hard time understanding some things he says. So.
Yeah, so there was an American. So I think there was a British sitcom called Birds of a Feather about two Cockney women, and they showed it to an American audience, and they asked these two American people, and they asked them how much they understood, and they said about 10%, because they had very strong Cockney accents. So
yeah, I don't remember because again I won't attempt to always forget the various accents, but whatever part of London that Lisa Stansfield was from, I could understand her, and part of the reason was because she talked slowly.
Lisa Stansfield, London?
Yeah, I think she was from London.
No. She's about 200 miles away. She's from Lancashire.
Sorry.
Yeah, completely different accent, Lisa Stansfield.
Anyway, she speaks slowly enough that I could understand her, even though she had this very strong accent. So.
Yeah.
I thought of her just because it's someone, I listened to all these old countdown shows from 80s and 90s. So whatever show there was an interview with her, and so I was taking note of that because they were talking about where she was from. Obviously, I forgot that part, but anyway.
Because I remember you saying last time that you didn't notice the difference in the voice between Simon and Kappatoo.
Well, right.
Yeah.
I don't. They sound pretty much the same.
Yeah.
They just use different slang.
I can't remember if Wojtek was here. We could ask him. I can't remember if he said whether they overdubbed it or whether it was in English when he watched it in Germany. Because it might have been dubbed into German.
Oh well, yeah. Then when it's like that, then it's an entirely different actor. So you're seeing two different performances at the same time because you see the physical movements of the original actor, but then a voice actor doing a different interpretation. So
it's good. I must admit, though, I mean, on most of the things I watch, I put the subtitles on to make sure I catch everything.
Yeah, I don't like doing that. I will on occasion if I really have a hard time, but I don't like having to read what I'm watching unless I just have to. But in fact, I laugh whenever sometimes I'll see news programs where they'll have someone who is speaking in English, but they have English subtitles because they think that their accent is too strong that people won't be able to understand them. And most of the time I understand them just fine.
Yeah.
Like they love to do with Cajuns for one, because nobody thinks anyone can understand Cajuns, which I don't usually have a hard time. And then the other thing is various African countries. They'll have somebody, native African, like Nigerian or something like that, who's speaking English, but they'll have the subtitles.
Oh, there's one way you need it. There's a sitcom in called Housemate, because it came up because of come across this sitcom called Housemates of Lagos, and that's in English. But it's hard to pick up what's being said, and that has subtitles on it, and so that's made in Africa, and so they've put subtitles on it.
Yeah.
not particularly good.
Well, I found myself having to do that with the new, I know it's not new anymore, but the newer Doctor Who versus the classic Doctor Who, because in the classic Doctor Who, they always made the Doctor speak in a way where he was very understandable, whereas the new one, they had Christopher Eccleston at the beginning, like mumbling his head off. So
he was Northern again.
So I could catch maybe 40% of everything he said without the subtitles.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that Americans have trouble with the accents, usually with the accents outside of the more regional accents.
Well, I could say that some of those people have trouble speaking instead, rather than.
That's true. Although I would say
enunciating, we'll put it that way. That was one of my father's favorite words. He would always say, "Enunciate."
Well, that's because in those older Doctor Who's, like, they were trained on stage and like to speak very clearly, so that people at the back can hear.
Right, and to me, it's a valuable thing, regardless of whether or not you're even broadcasting something to other countries. But even to your own, it's valuable to speak in a way that people can understand you.
And in fact, that was the sort of the science behind the sort of like the BBC voice when they came up with the RP. And there's an old documentary about it from the 1930s about deciding because it's when radio came in and they had to think, wait a minute, we've got all of these different regional dialects in England. What accent are we going to use that everyone can understand? So it's interesting. There's this sort of like thing.
I still think it's less to do with the accent as it is just being clear in the way you speak.
Yeah, and it's also.
I mean, somebody like Sean Connery. I mean, he's got in a lot of the things he did, he had a pretty thick accent, but he enunciated. So you could understand most of his dialogue no matter what he was doing.
Yeah.
So there was always that brogue there, but it wasn't where you couldn't understand him because he was mumbling or whatever, or speaking too fast.
So you've got better. I think you've got better at understanding Jonathan, though.
Probably a little better than when I first heard him. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have trouble sometimes, but.
Yeah. I can understand Jonathan quite. I used to watch Rab C. Nesbitt, so that was like thick Glaswegian accent. Something like Adipa, which is in English is "I'll do you, pal." Right. So what do I give this out of 10? I'll give it about 7 out of 10, and they could have had more mystery in there around the route around the Zeta 8, rather than just laying it on the line and telling the audience that she's a time traveler.
Was that an actual rating, Morgan, or are you just holding up fingers? Morgan says 2 2s out of 2.
That's quite high for him.
Who knows what that means? I'll give it a 6. But like I said, I think it was sort of divided. I think the second part was much better than the first part. So if the first part had been more like the second part, I probably would have rated it higher. But
mind you, 6 out of 10, some perspective, that being like your top 5 Blake 7 episodes.
Yeah, well, right. It's still, 6 out of 10 means I still enjoyed it. It was fun. It was a little bit. In the first season, I praised the pacing of the show. This one was not as good at that. So that's the thing that knocked it down slightly from. So
have you seen The Curse of Fenric?
No.
Okay.
That one I'm almost sure I have, because isn't that from the final season?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So I never saw any of the final season because the PBS channel, the last episode they showed was The Greatest Show in the Galaxy, the one with the psychic circus, which I haven't seen that in 30 years, but I do remember I saw it the first time. It was quite memorable. But when you're a kid and you didn't have like now, or that you can look up on the internet whenever anything is on, I tune in the same time the next week and Doctor Who just wasn't on. And so any other time that I checked it, it wasn't on. So I don't know whether they brought it back later that year or what happened. But anyway, they stopped showing it. So I never saw any of the ones from that last season.
I mean, I would have put him in charge, like Andrew Cartmell, the script editor, in those like final 3 years. I thought they were doing good stuff in that final season of Doctor Who.
Yeah, well, I remember. I liked the Seventh Doctor, as I recall. I thought he was pretty cool, and I liked the companions. I liked both Mel and Ace.
Yeah, what's weird about the Ace performance is that in her first episode, Sophie Aldred is terrible, but then she's a lot better.
Well, I disagree because I thought she was fine, but and in fact, when there was. I can't remember now if I have this vague notion that we actually did play a Doctor Who role-playing game of some kind. You know, that was one of those where we had the booklet. I'm pretty sure we did, and I think at some point I actually either played Ace or at least a character that was like based on her or something.
When you say we, you mean this is involving me?
No, my brothers.
Oh, right. Because I think I didn't remember that. I know my memory is bad, but flipping out.
No, the royal we, Ben.
Oh, okay, the royal we. Right then, so his Jeffness gives it 6 out of 10, and I give it 7.
Join us next time for hopefully something else happens.
Yeah, and probably another title with time in it.
For Down on the Farm, we find out whether what's her face always dresses to impress.
Right.